right, what up, y'all? Happy Sunday night. It's your host, Wes Seiler, for Conservatism on Tap. Oh, I love this show. This has to be up there in terms of one of my highlights of the week, because where else do you get the chance to get to talk to amazing conservative thinkers and leaders, as well as scholarly gentlemen, and also have a great drink while you're doing that. And you get to talk about whatever the heck you want, no matter how formal or informal or just wild. So that's going to be tonight. Again, Wes Seiler from the Berkeley Conservative channel. Happy to do this show. Always having a great time. But I am thrilled to be joined with a full cast tonight. So Josh Lewis from the Saving Elephants podcast. It's great to see you, brother. How are you?
Cheers. Good to see you guys.
And then Cal Davenport from In the Trenches. Great to see you, man. Always also doing amazing work out there.
Great to be here.
And then my brother Jonathan Seiler, and co-host of this show. Man, you've got an amazing lineup. I appreciate you doing all the work here to be able to get this show off to the races. We got a lot of fun stuff, and we got to jump into it. Before we get to the beer, I got to tell you what I'm drinking tonight. I think it's so appropriate and probably the most conservative thing we have on the channel tonight, which this is St. Augustine Distillery's pot distilled rum. And if you've ever been there, it's one of my favorite cities in America, honestly, because it's the oldest city in America. At least that's what they claim. Pre-existed the country, founded, by the Spanish, and they really hold fast to their tradition and their history and their identity. They know who they are, and they keep it together, even through the years. And then they produce just great liquor, and that's what I'm enjoying tonight. But Jonathan, I know you got a beer on tap for us. What do you got?
Yeah, still sticking with the traditional route west with Samuel Smith's. So here it is. I don't know if you can see that there, but we had the we had the organic chocolate stout last week. Now we're going on with the nut brown ale, because there was a little bit of criticism that, like, come on, Jonathan, you're drinking way too much stout, and it's like springtime, so you got to kick it back up to something that's more appropriate. Nut brown ale is good all year round, all seasonal. I highly recommend it. The interesting thing is that you're not going to find a whole lot of nut browns. At least I don't see a whole lot of nut browns distributed around. Usually it's IPAs, citrus things, or it goes straight to, like, dark beers. But with a nut brown ale, you pretty much get that nice, good, you can even see my face, that reddish brown color. There's no nuts involved. It's all in the malt. But this is a 5% beer. It's easy to drink if you're not into the stouts. But you don't want, if you're getting old, feeling like the IPAs are getting kind of old, try a nut brown. It's a good change of pace, and it's easy to drink. So I do like it. Not everything is a knockout, but this definitely is.
That's awesome, man. No, great commercial.
It's already half gone.
That's awesome, man. No, I appreciate you doing that. It's a lot of fun. So if there's a beer that, folks that are watching this show live or, through the week, let us know if there's what is your favorite beer? What do you like to feature? If there's a specific liquor that you want us to bring up, or anything. I know Josh is a big fan of different teas out there, man. So anything that you are drinking, that's what we like to feature on this show, and just figure out something that makes, politics a little bit more palatable. Like I feel like there's been times in this country where people used to get together over differences and just have a beer and talk about it. And I'd love for that to come back. I'd love for us to be able to say, you know what? I like this author. You like that author. I like this politician. You like that politician. But hey, we both like Samuel Smith's Nut Brown Ale, so we must be friends, right? and I want that to come back. So I appreciate you doing that. And that leads us to our next segment here, which is the Toast and Roast, which is quickly becoming one of my favorites here. This is our chance to be able to figure out who is someone that we can toast and celebrate and enjoy. Whether that is someone who's conservative or not, doesn't matter. Just a person doing a good thing in life. It's always fun to do that. We've got our first comment here, which is Payne Walker, who is a big fan. Looks like Samuel Smith's or any organic. I appreciate it, Payne. We'll have to keep on with the series based on that.
Next is going to be the oatmeal one for sure. So that'll be the last of the line. But yeah, that's it.
I feel like we know who our next big toast is going to be after tonight, and it's got to be Josh Lewis, because do you want to mention all the things you got going on your podcast, brother?
Well, the main thing is I had Jonah Goldberg on my podcast. Yeah, excellent radio podcaster himself. Very funny guy. Was happy to get him. Episode should drop on Tuesday. So, yeah, very excited about that.
So we're going to do like a full spot on that here a week from now. I can't wait to listen to it. I'll be driving to work and I'll listen to the entire thing, man. I know Jonathan and Cal will too, so that'll be a lot of fun to talk about. And that's going to be a serious one. I know that's going to cue up a lot of discussion about Woodrow Wilson and progressivism and how to survive it and everything else. So with that kind of seriousness coming, I feel like, hey, we need to have a little bit more fun this time. Keep it light. And what could be lighter and more fun than, Mortal Kombat. So
yes.
Our host tonight is about to be played right now.
It has begun.
Been chosen.
For what?
For something known as Mortal Kombat.
The fate of Earth is in our hands.
Get over here!
Mortal Kombat. Theaters and on HBO Max the exact same day. Rated R.
I'm not going to lie. That looks pretty awesome. So that was your recommendation, John. So tell us about this if we're going to toast Mortal Kombat.
Well, first off, I ordered a shirt that has Scorpion on the front of it, and he has his COVID-19 mask, and he's going like, "Stay over there." So that definitely got it. So if you haven't noticed, Mortal Kombat 2021 has been released on HBO Max. You don't have to go to the theater. You can watch it. I did watch it last night, and maybe the reason it was so good was because I watched it back to back from like the first Mortal Kombat movie that was released. So, maybe the standard was low, but it is if you like the video games, it is perfect. It is perfect.
So you
will love it.
You mentioned COVID, and we were just talking about that on the last show, is that it feels like across the country, people are coming back. I mean, Florida, we never really left, but like, even then we're part of the coming back, but in like California and stuff, like Chris is like, yeah, I got to see people and like walk outside. It was awesome. But I feel like so many businesses are coming back and industries and like entertainment, so many cool things that are happening now. And I think it's awesome, like getting a chance to see a movie and hopefully go to a theater, maybe even in the next few weeks.
You'll notice too in the credits, actually, there is like COVID compliance, like coordinators in the credits. And it's like a whole list of individuals that are there. I'm not sure if they were that popular.
Yeah,
but they're there. It's a new world in regards to the film industry.
Got within 3 feet. You broke CDC protocols.
If you haven't watched it, you'll like it for sure. There's so y'all might notice this, but like in films nowadays, especially superhero films like Marvel or DC, like because things get so fantastic and so unbelievable, you got to insert a character who's like, looking around, being like, "That's nuts, that's ridiculous." And I think for X-Men, it was Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and he was basically the audience. He was like, okay, your wheels and your Stormy. Yeah. I got it. Well, they've got the same thing going on in Mortal Kombat here that actually is really, really effective.
Yeah, nice. That's a good point. I remember I was like listening to an interview of Hugh Jackman. He's like, I really don't know much about X-Men. And they're like, no, that's great. We're going to like work that into the character. Like you're the coolest one, but also like, don't pretend to like know more than you do. Like, oh, okay, we'll work that into the script. Cool. It was actually helpful. So totally right. So, talking about things that are unrealistic, as well as like a little outdated. You mentioned the older Mortal Kombat, and I'm pretty sure we have a clip of that we get to roast tonight. So that's going to be fun. And that is starting now.
Shao Kahn, Emperor of Outworld.
The Earth was created in 6 days, so too shall it be destroyed. And on the 7th day, mankind will rest in peace.
This is not good.
Somehow he's opened gateways to your world.
I thought our victory in Mortal Kombat closed those portals.
What closes can also open again.
What is that supposed to mean? alive.
Too bad you will die.
Whoa.
It's Oscar worthy.
I had
Tell me
seen
y'all
the
seen this
last
movie.
part of it before, but now seeing the full context, and I felt like that 1 minute of my life was both wasted and enjoyed at the same time. Like, it actually makes it worse because there's actually like a train of thought. Granted, it makes very little sense, but at least there's a train of thought. But then, like, what? So you did have actors that spoke decent English. You just chose not to use them.
I'd love to know y'all's first experiences with Mortal Kombat, whether it was forbidden, whether it was something that y'all embraced. Did y'all play Mortal Kombat?
I'm probably dating myself. I mean, I was a kid. I remember going down to the Arcadia, or even back when they had arcade games in every fast food joint, and watching it. I mean, that show taught me that apparently you could lose your spine in 80 gallons of blood and still get up and fight round two.
Yeah.
Gratuitously violent. I mean, it was just insanely violent. I'm sure my mom probably didn't approve. She didn't necessarily keep a real tight leash on me when I went over to the Arcadia, and it didn't really matter because she never gave me a quarter to play it anyway. So all I could do was kind of watch someone else play. But yeah, that was sort of my experience with Mortal Kombat.
How about you, Cal?
I never played. I don't think I've ever played it in my life, but I did. I think my first experience seeing the movie was on cable, where it was relatively edited, because that was the only way that I could see it when I was younger, and had to see the version that we know and love later on. But I think when you're at a certain age, the delivery of those lines and the awkwardness of those lines just goes over your head, and you're just like, this is awesome. And I want to ask, because having not played the game, is that music that they're playing in the background of the movie, is this reminiscent of the game at all, or is that like totally a thing that they just made up for the movie?
I mean, like,
they made that up for the movie. That's what makes it so memorable. Is because like that's part of why the movie stands a little bit more the test of time, is because the music, like they just cue the music for like almost every fight because they know the music is that good because nothing else is.
So I remember being a kid, much like Josh, and like Mortal Kombat was forbidden, and the only place that we could play it was at CiCi's Pizza, right? And so, whenever our parents decided, hey, we're going to go out to CiCi's, right, we would tell them it was for the, pizza or whatever. It was really for Mortal Kombat. But I remember having a blast as you get all of those, like, pizzas and stuff, and then you get to go play the arcade, and it was, like, around the corner, so you could play it, and your parents, like, didn't even know, right, like, that's what you were playing. So that's how we got away with it, and I was like, oh, that was the best day ever. And, like, and of course, after I hit the age of like 8 or 9, like we never really went back to CiCi's Pizza, like we went to other places, and I kind of forgot about it. And so a couple of years ago, being in my early 30s, like we actually had somebody at work that was like, hey, let's go to CiCi's Pizza. And I was like, oh yeah, the kids, that'd be awesome. I have so many good memories of there. And then I went and I had the pizza, and I was just like, oh, this is terrible. Like, has it gotten worse, or like, is this just how they do it? And I'm like, this might be how they do it. And I was just that jaded. And it actually helped me realize that, like, hey, I don't have to feed my kids gourmet meals because I thought CiCi's was good. Like, but I went to, I went around the corner and there was a Mortal Kombat game, and it was a newer one, but I was like, yes, at least that part still lives. So it's very nostalgic. It's very, it's a lot of fun, but it's ridiculously violent. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. The one thing that the movies can't quite really get over though is like you ask yourself halfway through any of these movies, even the new one, you're like, how come I'm not just playing the game?
Right.
Like, wouldn't that be more fun? Like I could pull off the move and that sort of thing. And like, there's not really an answer to that. I mean, I guess if you just don't want to do anything, you can watch the films and enjoy it, but you will come back to play.
That's what you'll do. Right? Like, okay, that's fine. Good for him, but like, when's my turn? So, all right.
Exactly.
So getting into a little bit more of our main topic tonight is I feel like we got to talk about just ghost stories and horror in general. Is we've talked about combat movies and violence and all that stuff, but I feel like we can get into conservatism and how do we approach these things, including even something beyond just the violence, which is so much a part of the horror genre, as it stands, but just this notion of fear and dread and all those things. And I brought some examples here, which we can talk about. So, You've got like Stephen King, right, and H.P. Lovecraft, and it and all those things. Here's my question for you guys for tonight is how should conservatives approach the genre of horror? How do you let your kids see some of this stuff at some point? Do you just keep them away from it? I think of, there are discussions among certain people of we shouldn't even let our kids watch Harry Potter because it's got witchcraft in it. And then you've got things like this. I remember going back to the 90s, I remember Goosebumps was like what we used to trade with little bitty books, right? Like with the
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Are You Afraid of the Dark, right? All of those things. But in today's world, where there's that and more that you can access from the internet, where should conservatives stand on the genre of horror in general? What do you guys think, Josh? Starting with you.
You're starting with, well, I think there's kind of two questions wrapped in there. One is where should conservatives stand on it? The other being kind of what is the appropriate role for, say, parents and children to introduce themselves to these subjects? And those are really two different questions. I mean, I think there's some discretion to be used there. I know that when I was growing up, it wasn't, gosh, what was it? I guess Harry Potter came much later, but there was that entire Dungeons and Dragons was evil. Just anything that smacked sort of a darkness or spiritual realm was evil. And it wasn't until a little bit later in life I started to read C.S. Lewis and Tolkien is like, there's an awful lot of magic and spiritualism in here that isn't just overtly Christian. And I think there's kind of a sanitation, almost a materialism that has crept into a lot of red state America. That unless it's just overtly Christian, we're almost afraid to touch it. And I think that fear, an element of horror. Now it's kind of Hollywoodized. I know that we're talking about Mortal Kombat. There's an awful lot of blood and grotesque. To me, it's not that that's necessarily good or bad. It's I kind of think of that as the stand-up comedian that cusses. There's a place for that, but if that's all you do, then you've kind of lost the element of comedy. Whereas in this case, if all we're focused on is the gore and the bloodshed, that's not really the heart of horror. That just can be a component of it. But I think there's a dreadful need, shall I say, to reawaken fear and foreboding as well as wonder, as well as a sense of we don't have this whole thing figured out, that we're not just machines, but there's actually a spiritual reality, and that horror can actually in a very healthy way awaken that in us.
Yeah. What would you add to that, Kyle?
Well, I think one of the things that this the horror genre and anything that sort of deals with that idea of Josh said foreboding, or maybe the term awe, or what that can do is maybe what conservatives I think need to really be focused on is this idea of helping. What is it that helps us in terms of narrative understand what human nature is like, what reality is like, what existence is like, that there is a spiritual element to the world and things like that. That again, there are unknowns. There's the great Chesterton line about I'm pretty sure it's Chesterton who says something to the effect of, children don't need to read fairy tales to know that dragons exist. They already know dragons exist. They need to know that dragons can be defeated, or something to that effect. And I think that that's the place of something. Just like fantasy, horror has this place of understanding the reality that we can easily forget in sort of the materialist or secular view of the world that we tend to have in our daily lives. Sort of jolts us out of that the mundane.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. We get to this point. You're so right, both of you guys, about the materialistic side of life, especially as you get older. We're talking about Mortal Kombat and stuff when we were kids, but now I have kids, and you get focused on paying the bills and making sure, that they've got food on the table, getting them from point A to point B. You get focused on this material side of life of just taking care of, these human beings at a material level, and you can start to lose some of that wonder and mysticism and all those things, and you can forget that ultimately life is based on faith, right? It is based upon supernatural forces and things we don't fully understand, and that childlike wonder, we can start to lose it as we're trying to protect another human being. And something maybe not like these that, you know, what I've put up here on the screen, but there are other types of this genre, like for example, what Russell Kirk did with his ghost stories, that we can start to navigate to. I remember being a kid and we had a collection of ghost stories that came from one of our teachers, and he would wait until Halloween, and then, you know, every year he would teach us ghost stories and like help us memorize them and how to tell them the right way. And then he was like, now you only want to use these at the appropriate time and make sure you put the emphasis here and there. And we would work on it as part of our, like, you know, English class. And then I remember, you know, having sleepovers and things like that with our church and stuff. And I'd be like, hey, you know, when it was like late at night, we're supposed to be asleep. I'm like, hey, you guys want to hear a story? And that's when you would bust that thing out and everybody would be terrified, you know, and like all like we would all be sleeping together in a corner, you know, or like little boys, ah! You know? And my parents would come in the morning and be like, were you scared of the wall or something? Like, what's happening? Like, but it was this common experience that we had. It was like, but it wasn't this like gory, grotesque, like, you know, demonic thing. It was more just like, you know, the storytelling aspect of it and the wonder that you guys are mentioning. And I would love to see that. And I don't think as Christians or as conservatives that we should shy away from it. We should, in a sense, purify it because we know that it can be defeated, like you were saying, Cal. So, John, what's your response?
You're gonna hate me. I have a story.
Go.
And when I was in like late middle school, you know, The Ring came out, movie, right? So I'm watching The Ring in my own home, like alone,
yeah.
And it's upstairs, and the movie like runs its course, and like I am spooked. I am just like really, really spooked by this movie, right? You know, and you know what it's about, right? You play a video, you watch it, and all of a sudden in 7 days you're gonna die because this girl's gonna come out of the TV and suck out your soul. As soon as the movie's over, right, it goes to static, and immediately my landline rings, and I answer it, and all I hear is this 7 days, and then it hangs up, and I'm like, all of a sudden my entire worldview changed. Like, you could have told me, like, obviously I knew God existed. That was easy. I go to church every other week, right? But you tell me that a ghost exists that's going to kill me in 7 days, like my entire perspective of life changed, you know? Of course, Wes was on the other line.
I remember that.
So,
oh, man.
Totally got me. But for that brief instant, you know, ghosts existed, like clear as day, you know, like proof right there. And of course, I was trying to think of like, who am I going to show the video to so that they'll kill them and not me? But in all seriousness, you know, I think that there is a healthy mode for this. I mean, I'm looking at, you know, Wes, you've got H.P. Lovecraft there, and I think H.P. Lovecraft gets a little bit confused with nihilism when really I think a lot of his Cthulhu monsters and the horrific things that he ends up depicting are very much in accord with a higher meaning that just man can't understand. And it makes him feel very insignificant. And it's almost a horrific, assaultive version of the sublime that, in my view, Edmund Burke talks about, which is this feeling of terror, whatever is the source that is invoking terror in your life that you can't quite pinpoint. And it's not quite definite, but it is evoking these complex emotions in you that is expanding your view of what life, you know, at one point life was this small and you had all your categories involved with living things and such, and all of a sudden, boom, like it just got bigger because it forced itself on you. And you see that in a lot of horror movies. You see that sublime element, but usually when it's quality, it's coupled with something. Like if you take, you know, older things like Frankenstein or Dracula, it's coupled with like the sense of romanticism in nature and what heals people is going out and seeing this creation that God has made versus this deformity that man has created or that the devil has created. And with H.P. Lovecraft, you've got something along the lines of mystery that's involved. I think with Cal, you had mentioned G.K. Chesterton, and I'm running a gamut here because the genre is so huge, but he wrote the book called The Man Who Was Thursday, and he calls it a nightmare because at the very end, you know, you have a person who meets a very Jobian God entity that is seemingly like beyond anything that is that can be known, can never know it. And yet he's face to face with it, and he has this feeling of dread, and yet comfort, yet insignificance, and it's a lot of complexity that you can't help but feel like that's quality, sublime and horror mixed together.
Yeah.
Of course, it's to everybody's taste about how much grotesque you're allowed to see, or your sensibility is allowed to see.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a comment here from I think somebody on YouTube who was saying, what does conservative mean when the priorities seem to be Dr. Seuss and anti-masks and whining about liberals and all that stuff? And I just wanted to kind of answer that. I mean, we were talking about that before the show. It's like, if this was your first time watching it, you're like, wait, what, conservative? And they're talking about all this other stuff, Mortal Kombat and horror. But conservatism to us is much more than just these things that you've listed here. I mean, conservatism is a perspective. It is a belief system and way of life that, is very much in accordance with, our faith and, and perspective on so many things. And so it opens us up to these other topics beyond just, whatever happens to be on the news. I want to, kind of bring it down to my personal level of, my life is, and maybe this provides some clarity as you're speaking in kind of those broad terms, Jonathan, so we have this little owlet thing, right? This little owl that is a camera, and it's also got a tiny little microphone, but it's like very cheap, and Chinese made, I don't know, and distorts your voice. And so my wife, she would press a button in our room and then have the outlet set up in my son's room. And she's like, hey, Noah, that's my son's name. She's like, hey, Noah, go to bed. But it sounds like, hey, Noah, go to bed. Right? It's like terrifying, right? And so my son, who's 3, is just like scared to death of this freaking owl. Like he's terrified, right? And of course, like, we could just throw it away or like turn the light on and just like, like remove it from the equation, but we'd lose the camera to be able to see him. And I was like, no. This is an opportunity to be able to confront fear, right? And I was like, so that's what we need to do. And that was just kind of in passing. So I walked in the next night, and my wife was like having my son like pray by his bed, dear God, help me with my fear. I'm scared of the owl. And I was like, it's good. It's good. She was like, that's all we need to do. And I was like, no, there's another step. She's like, what is that? I was like, I handle it. I got it. Like, say your prayers and then take action. That's what we're going to do. And so I took my son, and again, he's tiny, he's 3. And I was like, are you scared of the owl? And he's like, yes, Daddy, I'm scared of the owl. I'm like, you want to slap it in the face? And he's like, what? And I literally like put him face to face with the owl, and I was like, punch it. Like, knock the thing over. And I was like, nice. And I put it back up, and he loved it. And he slept the entire night, no problem. And so now part of our nightly routine is to say a prayer to God and then slap the crap out of the like owlet thing. Barely anymore. But it's this idea that fear is a part of life. There are things to be afraid of. And if we try to pretend like everything is rosy and perfect and there's nothing, out there trying to get you, that's a distortion of reality, because there are things. There are things to be afraid of. Frankly, like, there are hard drugs out there, and there are dangerous countries to be in, and there are dangerous people, and you need to take precautions. That doesn't mean you run away and you hide. It means that you confront it. And I think this literature can be a way to wrestle with that feeling of fear, right? And be able to think about, how does this make me feel, and what would I do in that situation? If there was a ghost, like, what would I do? Because there truly are like dangerous and strange things out there. And if we have a little practice, maybe we'll be better at confronting them and just enjoy the experience, the aspect of life, right? Smack some owls around. So that's kind of my experience with it. But there's so much more to get into with this topic and so many others in literature in general. But I'm grateful to you guys, bringing the perspective that you have to this. Bring us back to our main screen here. I love being able to bring up conservatism in this light and be able to think about these different things that don't normally come up in political discussion. So I want to give you guys a chance for the last word. So Josh, I know you've got your podcast coming up on Tuesday. That drops at Saving Elephants, right?
Yes, Tuesday, first thing in the morning, savingelephantsblog.com.
Good deal. I'll be taking a look at that, and we'll be talking about that. And then Cal, what else you got going on, brother?
Well, on In the Trenches tomorrow, we're going to be talking with Professor Patrick Gary, who is at South Dakota Law School, and he's written books about why conservatism and not big government are good for the poor and disadvantaged. And that's something that's near and dear to my heart in terms of believing that that's just not something that we talk about enough among just at least in the Republican Party, and not enough in conservatism. So really looking forward to that. We'll probably drop that about in the next week or so.
Okay. So we got a lot to talk about. Those are some pretty deep topics, so we'll make sure to get some reactions to that as well. And then, Jonathan, thank you for all the work that you've done on this show and all the great topics. I'm going to go see Mortal Kombat this week. I've made a decision.
Everyone should.
A couple of scary books as well. So, hey, thank you guys. Thanks for being on Conservatism on Tap. Thanks the folks Payne and everybody else who found it in truth, everybody else who put in comments. If you've got topics that you want us to cover, if you've got books, if you've got beer, anything that you want to be able to come up on the show, let us know. And then don't forget to follow us on theberkinconservative.com. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. And then, of course, we'll be right back here, same time next